Hey, everybody, and welcome. Jonathan Broadbent here, your host of UnWoke Academy. Today, joining me, I have Terry Newsome from, among other things, Parents Involved in Education and Behind Enemy Lines. This one is going to be a little interesting for me to set up. For those of you who don't know, one of the things that I've done in volunteer activity in my life is advocating for education and against the woke stuff in K through 12 education. Here in Ohio, we have a group called Protect Ohio Children, and I was a chair and territory lead and was one of those people named a domestic terrorist. You can't see it, but I'm air quoting that. Our infamous attorney general billed us as domestic terrorists. So I was one of those people that would go out and advocate in school districts for a return to traditional education. And Terry Newsome and I, through that activity, met and started talking a couple of years ago, and he is... we're cut from the same cloth. He's in the same battle in the state of Illinois, runs a podcast called Behind Enemy Lines. He also publishes on Substack like I do. So go find Terry Newsome, find Behind Enemy Lines. And by all means, if you are conservative and care about our country and future generations, get involved in the fight for education, because the woke stuff is destroying children and childhood. But I'll save that for as we dive into this conversation. Terry, welcome. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Jonathan. And it's been a long time coming, so I apologize. So I was raised Southwest Side Italian American Union Democrat family. It's all I knew in my neighborhood. My uncles were presidents of union. I was in 2 unions. My dad worked for the city of Chicago. I was never active in politics. I just knew, my whole family was Democrat, and until 2013, I think I registered to vote as a Republican, because as I got older and stuff, I'm like, what the heck's going on here? And then my mom's 86 and my dad's 85. They're both alive and they're both Republicans now. My mother is like a mega granny now, big time. And she got mad that I when I started to gravitate towards being a Republican, or should I say transitioned to being a Republican, when I was transitioning. Different kind of transition. And she's like, those evil Republicans is kind of funny. Oh, the dirty money, blah, blah, blah. Now she's like, she gets shut down on Facebook in her 80s, speaking up and defending us. So went to my first school board meeting to speak out first about the forced masking in Illinois with Radical Pritzker we got here, right? And spoke to a bunch of moms on the phone before I went there. I got to the meeting. They were all kicked out by half an hour into the meeting. And it was like 12 mothers and one dad. So as you know, not many dads are helping the mothers, they're starting to, but not as much as they should, and especially back then. And they were kicked out for going over their 3 minutes, and they call it a closed door emergency meeting. So they couldn't be in the meetings. And I said, listen, I'm going to teach you guys how to fight like an ex-Democrat Italian Southsider. We're going to fight back, and I'm going to give them the same lack of respect that I hear they're giving you guys. So sure enough, here I am. And I was successful in that. And I brought the images. I blew them up into big poster size of genderqueer, and I have them here. Matter of fact, here I have this cleansed for audience, but I think everyone's familiar with that, right?
Yep.
And I brought those to the school board meeting, and drove the radical leftists nuts. I had retired cop I had a bunch of them. And then I had to have some other fathers. The parents from Downers Grove were scared to hold these posters and participate because the radical left extremists that took over where I live are so brutally hostile. They attack everybody, your job, your spouse's job, small business. I mean, they're still doing that now. My friend running for village council, going after his wife, going after one of my friends who just liked Paul. It's just crazy. I mean, they're just evil, nasty people. And, they say, we're fighting, left versus right. I believe it's good versus evil. I really believe that. And there's evil on our side as well, but more on their side. Right. So we're fighting these evil radical leftists. And so I got a couple fathers that live in my neighborhood that I know that happen to be Proud Boys, and I said, listen, would you guys hold these signs? I can't get people to hold the signs. These posters, like, yeah, sure. I go, come as fathers. All right. I don't want to distract from the whole reason why we're there. And they came as dads. And they came, to hold my posters. Unknown to us, one of the women, the nice inclusive women was Antifa. and sit next to us, and they recognized their faces. So they turned it into the Chicago Sun-Times, the front page, 3 full pages, John. Proud Boys take over school board meeting. They didn't even say anything. They held my posters, you know what I mean? So they twisted it from around the, you know, the whole purpose of why we were there. And so I've been labeled, you know, a Nazi, racist, bigot, Proud Boy associate, Proud Boy wannabe, all this other crazy, you know, stuff, which is kind of ironic when they, you know, they facilitate or collaborate with Antifa, right? And they're putting my pictures, another father's pictures on the Antifa website, harassing us, threatening us. And matter of fact, the one woman, her name's Mary Lemansky, who was in Chicago Antifa. She's the same evil woman that you remember with Kyle Rittenhouse when he was, he won his case or whatever. And then they had the Waukesha mass murder of Black Lives Matter during the Christmas parade.
Yeah.
Those people were killed by Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
This woman praised it and said they got what they deserve, including the kids, because of Kyle Rittenhouse not being charged or not being found guilty. So that was exposed. You know, that was just one of them, many of them, right? That was exposed. Fox News, she lost her job. Her job. She was the Democrats' social media manager, by the way. So that's kind of what we're dealing with. They go after everybody. You know, then they claim that you hate gays, you're racist, Nazi. This, none of that stuff's true. None of it's true. But they use that. They use the media, the liberal media here. Another guy that lives in the neighborhood, his name is Jeff Tischauer. He's a PhD, University of Wisconsin, Antifa associate scumbag. They got him to come after me and write a hit piece a couple of years ago, Southern Poverty Law Center. You know, I hate everything, right? You know, and thinking it was going to silence me, right? And also, there was, I mean, you know me a little bit, pissed me off. And I got more aggressive, John. And it elevated my profile in our community, you know, in our community, that hit piece, because it's so ridiculous. And I didn't like it. You know, I was like, oh, yeah, it's a badge of honor. I'm like, I don't know if it's a badge of honor. And, you know, so kind of, you know, I got lots of interviews because, you know, people because this was new to me, but people on our side view it as like the National Enquirer, you know, the Southern Poverty Law Center. They go after everybody. Became president of Parents Involved in Education. As a matter of fact, that same guy, Tischler, was responsible for putting Illinois Parents Involved in Education. We're on that hate list too. So if you look, we're on there with Moms for America. Awake Illinois, it's another lady that we were supposed to run 2 events. Parents Involved in Education, Moms for Liberty, Moms for America, Wake, Illinois, No Left Turn. We were having Gays Against Groomers speak, co-sponsored by Log Cabin Republicans. They threatened 2 venues. They threatened them. They threatened to shoot them. They threatened the owners. They threatened the bands that play there. They're Nazis, and they both caved on me. I'm really, you know, pissed about it. And that's what we're dealing with here. These people are supposed to be inclusive, diverse. Love is love. They're you know this. They're the opposite. Everything they accuse us of is what they are. Everything. So that was my real passion. It's still my passion, because I know we're going to talk about a lot of different things here. But that got me into politics, and I saw these people lying to us and saying that stuff's not pornography. You know, then they started putting tampon machines in the boys' bathrooms in Illinois. You know, from grammar school through college. I'm like, these guys are like, as I learn more about the Marxists and what they're trying to do, and they're trying to weaken, you know, the children from us, right? And make weak men. And I think everybody knows that now, right? And so all the dirty money that's coming from, you know, communist China and all these other left job wackos like Soros and all the things that are being uncovered and exposed now, the whole purpose and intent is to weaken our boys. They don't want them like us. They don't want us doing this right now, right? And so then I got more involved in politics. And the next big thing I did is I went after Joe Biden. I figured I might as well shoot high. And we filed a petition to keep him off the ballot in the state of Illinois, just like what they did to President Trump. Exactly. We went in front of the board of elections, tons of TV news cameras there. And we used the same criteria they falsely tried to accuse Donald Trump of, that Amendment 14, Section 3, the paragraph below insurrection that they used against Trump. Remember insurrection one? It says if they provided comfort and aid to the enemies. So we're like, okay, we got 3 examples, right? Unlike their fake one using, you know, the Congress hearing. That was their excuse. Actually, the guys going after Trump, the attorneys, were before us, and then we were after them. So I watched what they were saying, and you know, so our examples of Biden providing comfort and aid to the enemies is Afghanistan. They left the military equipment and weapons in the hands of Taliban, and we're finding out they're being used all over the place now, right? That's, you know, comfort and aid. The next one was remain in Mexico, right? They overturned what was the opportunity to stop our country being flooded by not just illegal immigrants, but our enemies, drug dealers, gang. Right? I mean, that's what happened. He did that, and what happened? Right? So he's providing comfort aid to our enemies that want to destroy America. The last one is that they went and fought in front of the Supreme Court to make Texas, a sovereign state, open their borders. Remember that? He forced them. They wanted to protect it. They went to court. I mean, those three examples right there are very, very, if you look at them holistically, they're very destructive to us, to America. And of course, the election board, there was two Republicans, there's really no real Republicans in office in Illinois. And their excuse, and Joe Biden's attorney's excuse, was saying that everything that I was saying was false. It was partisan. It's not true. But when I sat back and heard them, go after Donald Trump with the fake congressional hearings, that was their evidence. It was not partisan. It was true. It was like crazy, right? And so, of course, I don't think I have to tell you what the outcome was, right? I mean, it's Illinois. And what really stood out to me is the two Republicans on the election board. They said about Donald Trump, for the first hearing, is that if this thing went forward, they didn't go forward with it because they didn't think it was their job to interfere with the Supreme Court or whatever. They said, we believe he is guilty of insurrection. We believe he's guilty in violence, and he's responsible for the deaths of those people on January 6th. These are supposed to be Republicans, right? They had to get their talking points in there. So, I gave it a shot. I was hoping the Supreme Court did eventually do what they were going to do, but I got so pissed off of seeing state after state going after Donald Trump, right? Off of bullshit. And it's like, okay, I want to give them a little bit of their own medicine, knowing that we're in Illinois, knowing that it was going to, not go anywhere, but I at least wanted to. And the media, of course, really didn't pick it up, Jonathan, just little local, stuff like us and podcasts and stuff like that. So then the next thing was the illegal immigration of the Venezuelans coming into our country, right? And especially over here by my house, I live in a western suburb, very nice western suburb. Mayor Brandon Johnson put out an announcement that he was going to an ordinance that'll confiscate the buses that come from the border that Abbott was sending up. They could no longer, be sent to the city of Chicago. So what they started doing was the buses. There was 1,100 buses that were dropped off in Illinois. They would drop them off in my train goes east and west. My train, by my house, from the west into the east of the city of Chicago. They started dumping them off in buses on the train tracks at different high-end suburbs. And then there's another one that goes north, from the northwest down into the city, same there. So there was 1,100 buses, man, and they just dump them off at our train station. They, so people called me, and I went there, and I confronted them. I got the left. Oh, they're going after me. You're going after these innocent asylum seekers. Most of them are not innocent asylum seekers. Yes, there are many parents and families coming to try to make a better life. That doesn't mean that they're allowed to come here illegally. That doesn't mean we have to fund everything they eat, breathe, drink. They're getting cars. They're getting. It's crazy. I could talk. I got so much evidence on the FOIAs, the police reports, the human sex trafficking, the child porn, the beating of their wives, Catholic charities involved. I'm a Catholic. It's offensive. I got all these FOIAs, and because we haven't talked in a long time, and all the corruption. I got FEMA. I got evidence of FEMA. Remember they said FEMA wasn't doing it. I got evidence of Joe Biden's advisor, his special advisor, giving Department of Transportation funds, non-recoverable FTA Department of Transportation funds, to the deputy governor and 25 other people there for these illegal immigrant buses. So we're never going to have a full snapshot of between the city of Chicago, between the NGOs, these other government agencies that are being funded through us and kind of laundered through other, like USAID and things like that. And then these different agencies. So for instance, who would have thought? No one else. I haven't heard anything about Department of Transportation. Have you, following all this illegal stuff and the money? It's, no, so they gave it
absolutely.
To them. I don't even know how much it was. They said they gave it for the buses. So, it was in the email that I just happened to get. I wasn't looking for it, but it was in one of my requests. And I'm like, holy cow, and we'll never, ever have a full snapshot. Now, don't forget, in these shelters, you have all these different employees. I had a whistleblower. I didn't tell you this. Reached out to me in September. Older gentleman. He started in late 2021. And this is all true. And I got his check stub, Jonathan. $360,000 a year For what he had a shelter, they had 550 people in his shelter. So the pyramid there was 27 shelters in Chicago. Yeah, like a PMO. And then below it, there's like 2 project managers, and they work 12 hours per shift. Those guys got $275,000 a year. Under that, there's 2 operation leads, one for facilities management and other one for labor and resources, $200,000 each. Then you had the security guards, the food, all that other stuff that goes into managing these facilities. And then he kept an Excel spreadsheet, and he kept track of the meals, and really detailed. 55 at least % of the food was going wasted. He kept track of the security guard services too. So when he first started, it was called Securitas, was the security company, and there's supposed to be 2 guards per shift for his. His wasn't a big one. Some of them have 2,000 people. It's supposed to have two guards per shift. They almost never showed up. The Excel spreadsheet's all red with a little peppered green for 8-hour shifts. I got the email he sent to somebody from the city of Chicago trying to say, hey, make sure we don't, first of all, it's dangerous because you got, a lot of these scumbags and gang members in there. Secondly, he didn't want us, taxpayers, city of Chicago, to pay Securitas when they're not showing up. But that's typical Chicago ghost payroll stuff, John. It's typical. So
I've been hearing about that for years. And actually, I used to work in a job where we used to have to pay the union workers to unload the trucks when we ship stuff in. So the hubs for shipping and logistics for supplies, it's a lot of the same thing. You're last in line unless you pay, all that kind of stuff. I'm very aware of those kinds of things. Terry, give me a second here because I want to catch up to you with some notes that I've made in it.
Let me finish that statement.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
About the so he sent that email with the nice Excel spreadsheet. The woman from the city of Chicago responds. You think she'd like elevate it to get attention? She goes, "It's not our mission. Don't worry about it." It's like, so I got the email. I mean, the guy told me I got all kinds of stuff. It's on. I mean, I could go on from just this one whistleblower. I got another one that I have a friend of mine who saw me doing my show. I haven't seen him in 35 years. He was one of the security guards telling me about the stuff they were doing and prostitutes getting in there. They give better rooms to like gang type members, 2 rooms to help try to keep the control of all the other radical gang members, because they're preying off these people. So, I mean, it's just crazy. So I'll be quiet now and you throw some questions at me.
When we talk about the amount of pressure that's turned up against people like Terry and myself, people willing to step into the fray and use our conservative voice to advocate for conservative values, things like education and rule of law and those sorts of things, I can't miss the opportunity to throw into the conversation that kids are subjected to the same things. There are plenty of instances, and it's heartbreaking. I hear of a lot of them, of children who just show the slightest indication within our public schools or K through 12 government-run schools of being conservative or Christian or you name it, and the hammer comes down. I'm just going to throw one into the conversation, Terry. There's the daughter of somebody that I've gotten to know in a very far left, progressive liberal school district, who I'm just going to give you the synopsis. It goes crazy from here, but there are 2 key elements to the story in this one, and this is just a representative example. And we have to, I'm throwing this into the conversation for a couple of reasons, so that hopefully more people get their hackles up and step in to protect children and recognize what's happening. And also to let everybody know that people like us, we're not the target. The target is the children. Yeah. They want the next generation. They want to influence and sway them into communism, socialism, whatever you want to call it, the communist, socialist, Marxist agenda. So in these 2 instances with this young lady who was, I think at the time was a junior in high school, in one, she and a bunch of her girlfriends went to the beach and they're running around taking pictures, and they post the pictures of their outing day at the beach. And one of them somewhere in her Instagram profile, not related to that day, had a prayer that was posted. And the kids in the school went crazy over that. Here's this parade of these religious zealots trying to influence us and everything. It had nothing to do with the school. They were off school grounds just on a day outing. Then separately, as an offshoot of that, because it kind of blew up at the school and everybody was accusing them of being these Bible thumpers and whatever, one of the girls is sitting around in class like doodling in the margin of her sheet she was drawing on, some sort of workbook or something, and one of the other kids stands and points to it and says that she's drawing the cross, the sign of the cross. And they were called into the principal's office. The parents were called in. The parents were telling me, they were like, I couldn't even take it seriously. I'm like, who cares? What? I'm like, so draw the sign of the cross. This is a free speech. Free speech doesn't exist in this environment. And most especially, the point I want to make is that the kids now are so indoctrinated into this Marxist mentality of narking on anybody for anything, that the pressure that you were describing of trying to cancel people, get them fired for their job and whatever, it doesn't stop with us. And in fact, it's arguably maybe even more severe for children in K through 12. Yeah. So I did want to interject that. In a moment, I'm going to come back and ask you if you have any comments on that. The whole thing with men, absolutely. I've been saying that for years. I've been going out to these school board meetings and coaching communities on how to better inform themselves of what's happening in their districts. And it's mostly all women. Like every time, like, where in the heck are all the men? Dudes, get off the couch, turn off the game, and get your butt in there. It's your kids. It's the future generation. It's the future of America. For anybody that may be watching this, and I know this is a little bit off topic from the usual, and I am going to bring this back around to follow the money, because you know me, that's where I'm going to head with this. And I've done a lot of it with the publishers of a lot of this material, the pornographic stuff. We'll get there, trust me. But before we do, I want to answer the question that some people may have of, is this real? If there are people out there wondering, like, is it really that bad in K through 12 education? Is it have our schools gone that far off the rail? I'm going to suggest a few things for you. One is do some searches for how to defeat America without firing a single shot. That's a key starting point. It's a great breadcrumb from history. You may also look into the Communist Manifesto that speaks openly about trying to overtake the education system in the United States. I believe that we are very far along in that track and that process. And the last, for anybody that is interested in watching little YouTube video clips from the not too distant past, talking about a prediction of exactly where we are in education right now, look up Yuri, I always mess up his last name. What's it, Bremnovich? There's a guy who defected from communist Russia, from the KGB, and came to the United States and became a spokesperson for everything that the the Soviets had planned against the United States. And one of the keys that he kept talking about in these speeches that he gave all over the country was, watch your education system. The Soviets are coming after your education system. They want to subvert your children. When we're talking about these corrupted governmental agencies and what they represent, the harm, not the protection that we would imagine, but the actual harm, we can't go too far into the conversation without bringing in Child Protective Services, because CPS, apparently, according to a lot of the things that I'm seeing, actually plays a key harmful role in a lot of what's being discovered. Any comments on any of those things, Terry?
Yeah, so funny you bring that up. There's a radical leftist Marxist, Stava Murray, state level rep, that tried to push through this bill that parents could be imprisoned if they interfered with the child trying to be transitioned, and they could lose their child, all this crazy stuff. It didn't go through, but that's in my neighborhood. She's a whack job, total whack job. I don't even know how, how anyone could vote for a woman like that, right? That we have these people in our backyards here that want, still want the boys and the girls' showers and the girls' bathrooms and the girls' locker rooms, and then they attack us when we say that's not right. They brutally come out and attack us, right? And just because we don't agree with them, and then all of a sudden that we hate the gay community and stuff. Like I just had a gentleman, Robert Wallace from Gays Against Groomers, on the show about a month ago. I had Vince from Log Cabin Republicans, And these leftists over here, they're typically, and tell me if it's the same by you. You have like these lily white, straight suburban Karens who think they speak for the gay community and the black community and the minorities, right? I mean, that's like their charter. They live for that. And they're not even part of those communities. And they seem to be the most vocal. And then they're attacking these gay guys on my show. You know, I mean, attacking them about, you know, not supporting their own community. And it's like, it's nuts. It's like, how do you have a debate with a woman like that, you know?
It's all name calling. It's name calling as subterfuge. It's to try and blow smoke and get you to back down from whatever the issue topic is. And in the realm of follow the money, I'll tell you this comes up often. When we find fraud and malfeasance, because that's ultimately in my professional life, that's a big part of what I do. We've been doing audits and examinations of things like major workplace retirement plans. We've done union audits. We did one many years ago, about 20 years ago, that involved the New York State Teachers Union. And
it's gotta be
that got dark and dirty, ugly, fast. But one of the key tactics, I believe, of the leftists, Marxists, whatever you want to call them, we would struggle for like, what's a good universal term for these folks? Mm-hmm. You know, I say leftist, and so other people say globalist, whatever, the blob.
The bad lines are blurred, whatever the hell you want to call them. Yes.
Whatever you want to call them. One of the key tactics that is, I think at this point we should all agree is fairly universal and obvious, is putting up these people that fit into an identity group under the assumption that we can't say anything negative about them. If you've got a gay black female, by gender, whatever, then supposedly you and I are both white males. I'm heterosexual. That, you know, is all over my.
You're cisgender. Isn't that
crazy? Oh yeah, right. That's right. That's what they call me, cisgender. And so the moment I start talking about finding some sort of fraudulent element or misappropriation of funds or something, racist. Instantly I'm labeled you racist, you're mansplaining and everything. And what I've learned, it's a difficult landscape to navigate still, even when you know to expect it and you've been through it a bunch of times. Nobody likes being called names. But ultimately, at the end of the day, one of the things that I want to interject into our conversation, hopefully to encourage and embolden some of our listening audience, is don't pay attention to it. Just don't answer it, because you're going to spend all of your time trying to prove and defend yourself from a negative, which is impossible.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I've been going through this again. So I just said yesterday, I'm not responding anymore. So my partner, Paul, he's a 42-year-old combat vet. He's running, right? And they're trying to destroy him. He's got a wife, a family, you know, because he agrees like us, right? He's not belligerent. He's not swear. You know, I get, you know, a couple of years ago when I first got, you know, when they started coming after me for this, I was being pummeled by everybody, right? All these people, and people were scared to defend me back then because of what was going on. So now people are trying to, you know, defend Paul. And I was sitting on the sidelines because I'm a lightning rod, you know, and they're blaming, you know, him. And then I started defending him because they're coming out on his, you know, for his campaign, trolling him, calling him a Nazi, you know, all this crazy. And I start responding. Then I get sucked in. I was raised Southwest side Italian guy. I don't, you know, sometimes I don't respond politically correct. I go, let's say that, to put it that, and I lose my temper. And I told Paul last night, I go, listen, I'm getting wrapped up with these scumbags. I feel it's like I'm defending him and defending me and trying to say, you know, you guys are, I call them the LGBTQ Nazis. And it's like, I was doing exactly what you said, and I'm stopping it. I mean, I'm not going to waste my energy, my effort. They're nuts. You know, they're trolling him on his site. They're not there to try to change us, to have a dialogue. They are there to hurt, harm, harass, and intimidate. And I'm like done with it. I'm not going to waste because I get all wound up. I lose my temper. I'm like on my computer, you know, my keyboards are popping and stuff. And I'm like, I'm done. And they're going to be watching this interview. Just so you know, they're going to be watching it and try to criticize it. And, you know.
Oh yeah, they'll do the same on my followers, my negative followers. They'll be looking for something to use against me. But so at a certain point, there are two things that I've sort of gravitated toward. I've got a woman I've gotten to be friends with who is, I forget where she's originally from, somewhere in the South. She's got a Southern drawl, but she lives here in Ohio now. And she's got that whole Southern sweetness about her that's like, oh, bless your heart, sweetie. And she does that online. she's so unbelievably successful. I've been envious of her for years because people go after her, and that's her thing. She's just like, oh, thank you for contributing, sweetie. I'm like, man, if I could find a way with my Yankee Northern ways of imitating that, because it's so successful, it just shuts people down. They have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
But there's another approach that I've taken. When I get those, I'll post something on whatever the topic is, and I get this stuff, and I just immediately treat it as a non sequitur. It's a nonsense answer that has nothing to do with the post. So I will briefly acknowledge, thank you for your comment. Do you have anything to contribute on the subject? Sometimes if you do that enough times, they just finally give up and go away. They're like gnats.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a brutal battle. But here's what I think. I always try to include an element in my thought processes of, like, why do they do what they do? What's the agenda? What are they after? And a big part of it, I believe, is to scare and intimidate not just me, but other people.
Oh,
just
yeah.
like,
and it was working here. So sorry. Yes, you're right. Go ahead. Sorry.
and I think that was kind of the end of the thought, because I mean, it clearly has worked to a large extent in a lot of arenas. When you look at how they abused and mistreated January 6th and just blew it preposterously out of proportion to create this appearance that if you are at all conservative, if you go out and rally two or more, if you raise your voice a little bit, you are instantly deemed, some sort of aggressive, nasty, vile person in society, and you should be thrown in prison forever. That whole thing, that's the point behind J6 and things like it. The reason that we were called domestic terrorists for going in and advocating for education in K through 12 is to scare and intimidate people. And the more we talk openly about that and tell people, like, look, it's just nonsense. It's meant to try to instill fear so that people stay in their homes and don't say or do anything, so that communism can take root. Once you acknowledge that.
And discredit us. In a way, they try to discredit us as racist, bigot, then make people, to your point, scared to talk. Oh, I don't want to be associated with a racist and a bigot, let alone domestic terrorist. You know what I mean? And that's what they do. And I went to, because I don't know if we talked about this, I went to DC about 1.5 years ago with the Center for Self-Governance, specifically about the Southern Poverty and Loss Center, because they weaponize labels, the labels you just said, right? And there's lots of great people that are targeted, that is the Democratic Party weaponize the SPLC. So like, now I'm labeled a hate, and it's actually, I think it's called anti-government or something, but they think everything's hate, like the KKK. That's what they're known for, right? So the Moms for America, Moms for Liberty is Parents Involved in Education, me, and we're considered anti-government, and but people associate that with KKK. So it doesn't matter, right? They just associate, and they use that to discredit our voices, try to discredit our voices. So I got all these leftists, they keep reposting those stories, like I'm on the Southern Poverty Law Center list. That was, the reporter is an Antifa associate that wrote it. But by the way, they don't have Antifa and BLM considered, hate organizations. The good thing is, the reason I was in DC, now that Trump is in office, and I met with tons of politicians. I even had a half-an-hour meeting with Mike Lee. They're going to go after their nonprofit status. So I'm reaching out to these guys. This was 1.5 years ago when Biden was in. And one of the things that they're doing that I didn't even know, because there was a number of us, I represented with like the parents. There was other guys that were attacked and people. The Bundy Ranch guy, some guy that didn't even do anything wrong, went to jail. And so they have a division, the consulting division, the Southern Poverty and Law Center, that gets paid to go to state, local, and federal agencies. And they teach how to identify extremism. You know what's extremism? It's us. It's you and me. It has nothing to do with the left. They're taking our tax dollars and they're utilizing it for the Democratic Party to teach law enforcement that we're bad people because we don't agree with their radical views from the left. So they're supposed to go after him and try to take that. I bet you any money Trump will do that. You want to bet? He'll take their nonprofit status.
I hope he does. Many of them should lose their nonprofit status. You mentioned Catholic Charities, Lutheran Family Services, Jewish Family Services. There are elements of those organizations that have good parts to them. Yeah. However, there is rot within many of those organizations. You and I have talked about this periodically over the series of our phone calls. I'm on the for-profit side of tracking corporate behaviors. It's a big part of what I do at UnWoke.academy. And specifically when it comes into any of these issues that we touch on, like the behaviors in schools, the publishers behind the books, the porn books that are being pumped into K through 12, tracking those and who owns the publisher groups, tracking things like the hardware and software that's sold into K through 12. A big part of what we do is tracking those down and then reporting on them. And we do that in a lot of different arenas. Another example, it's sort of tangential, but a lot of commonality, which is kind of surprising. We took the companies that pulled their ad revenue from Twitter, X, when Elon Musk was being pressured into trying to curb free speech. And we did exposés on each of those. I think there were 51 companies and the owner groups behind them. Well, a lot of them have some commonality with some of the other bad actors. Same thing with lots of different arenas, like the voting machines. So ultimately, I keep telling people this: if you have an issue, follow the money. Yeah. And a big part of that is UnWoke.academy. But most importantly, more to the point to what we're talking about now, on the nonprofit side, we've got people who are looking through the tax forms that are exposing bad stuff. In addition to Doge, we've got people going back years who have been examining the boards of directors of these nonprofits, looking through what's called the Form 990, which exposes the expenses, how much of the money that they bring in actually goes toward the mission, those kinds of things. The amount of corruption there, it was Musk actually, just recently, within the last week, he posted something like these carve-outs, these nonprofits acting as an arm or extension of government is probably the most fraudulent, corrupt stealing of taxpayer dollars ever. Yeah. I think it was, I'm paraphrasing some tweet that Musk put out.
Are you able to, like, you know how you say follow the money? Is there ways for you to follow the money and funding and financing for like commercial property? So I'll tell you why. Two of the biggest centers that held like 2,000 Venezuelans, tons of Tren de Largo gang members there. The properties were bought after, remember COVID, everything was depreciated value, right? Especially for hotels and stuff. So one is called the Standard Club. It's a 150-year-old historic building. It was for the Jewish community 150 years ago. You know, it was like a big deal thing back at the turn of the century and stuff. And like all these big shots, people from all over the world would go there. And then it changed hands, and then it was vacant. I think it was sold for $9 million, if I remember. And there's another one called the Inn of Chicago. With, you know what the Magnificent Mile is in Chicago, Michigan Avenue shopping, where people go, right? High end. It's called the Inn of Chicago. So those are two facilities I went and confronted those Tren de Largo guys. And then as stories came out on these two facilities, they were bought at a basement price after COVID in 2022. The guy who bought them's from Michigan. He did 7 years in federal prison for some kind of financial fraud. All of a sudden, full occupancy, premiums with Venezuelans for a year or two. And then they're getting the hotels being remodeled and all this other crazy stuff that was tied into that. I believe that there's some connection to follow the money, something why he got that, right? Well, he knew when he bought those buildings, right? There was some, I don't know how you prove it or whatever, but there's something that goes on that this guy, a felon, bought these two properties fully occupied after everything's done and, the deal and stuff. And then after they're done, they're both being remodeled with our tax dollars that paid a premium in these properties, which is, then the value of a property depends on the occupancy, right? So they're fully occupancy. So the property value goes up, right? They're being paid by the government, we're Venezuelans. So there's something fishy there. There's another thing. Everyone knows how Mayor Brandon Johnson tells everyone that he's an African-American man, right? That he's looking out for black and brown people. He always talks about that. The 27 shelters, security guard company took over. The ones that today I had to go identify one of the guards that assaulted me, broke my phone. They had Garda World Security at all these different shelters. And Garda World Security is out of Ontario, Canada. They're like the Blackwater. Remember Blackwater?
Oh, yeah.
they're just like Blackwater. Matter of fact, you look stories now, they got the world's biggest army. So they're in Iraq, Afghanistan. Their headquarters is in Ontario, Canada. They have a U.S. Entity, but they're really a Canadian company. They are wall-to-wall security guards. So the mayor of Denver announced a few years ago that he signed a $40 million contract with Gardaworld. So they had these tents, these shelters. They're like military shelters, really. They're not even like tents. They call them tents, but they're like a structure. And so Denver canceled their contract because Gardaworld never assembled these types of shelters and tents before. Mayor Brandon Johnson, maybe 6 or 8 weeks afterwards, executed his contract with this Canadian white company. And there's got to be a reason why he doesn't hire an African-American, a minority, a city of Chicago security guard company to provide security, right? There's got to be a reason why. I mean, you know what I mean? Because he's always the black and brown people, always, right? And so when I looked into Gardaworld, a couple of things that stood out. Guess who provides security at Davos for World Economic Forum?
Really?
Yes. Guess who's tied to United Nations? Gardaworld. Back in 2007, the founder of Gardaworld from Ontario, there was a case that one of his divisions in California was suing him because he threatened to kill the husband and wife, the president, and then do some sort of surveillance on the rest of his family through his, I mean, it's like a military, they also, you probably see the armored cars as well. That's Garda. They have the armored cars. They have the security division. They've got these like paramilitary divisions. I mean, it's like, why would Mayor Johnson hire that to provide security, right? There's something going on there.
Well, ultimately, all of these types of issues boil down to money. And it really comes down to having a couple of key ingredients in my book. One, the first is having the people with skill and tenacity to dig and root around and find this stuff. Doge is a prime example. It's unbelievable what these tech kids have figured out. I mean, back in my day, you actually had to go in and you had to get access to bank accounting information, et cetera. And it used to be more difficult. But now, with the myriad of centralized control that has been built out of DC, some coders were able to go in and do some really sophisticated stuff and pull mass data of payment schemes all throughout this whole thing. And I think that's driving the left into fits. But on the local level, it's still a little boots on the ground. You got to get out there and get after it, which means getting some people with the courage and wherewithal to try and root around in those things. So here in Ohio, we've got the example of Springfield, Ohio. Springfield, everyone was talking about that for months because of the Haitians.
Eat those cats.
What's that?
Eat those cats.
Right. Yeah. Eat the pet. Right. Don Trump made some comments about Springfield, which really put it on the map. There are some people in and around Springfield who are doing a spectacular job of figuring out the people on city council, holding government jobs, et cetera, who allegedly have all kinds of 1 or 2 degrees of connection to all these profit centers emanating off of the Haitian presence. I know it sounds really complex, and sometimes it kind of is, but sometimes these bad people are really not all that bright, and they don't do a very good job of covering their tracks and building a very hidden web. It just takes the right people and wherewithal. The next step, and this is a key ingredient, is having the judicial and political wherewithal, the backing of somebody who holds some reins of power somewhere to go after them, which means having and knowing a good sheriff, maybe a county sheriff, having some true, actual patriot, conservative politician. Typically, in my experience, those tend to be on the right, but there are some good Democrats out there who are willing to step into the fray and fight against their party, which is really difficult in general, but extraordinarily difficult right now in this environment. But there are, I think, some out there that might be willing to do that. Get them the bundle of information and say, look, this is what's happening under your watch. And it just like we're talking about now relative to Doge, everyone's like, you've seen the memes out there with, people looking at their watch. Where are the arrests? Hopefully those are imminent.
I was sharing like information with a couple congressmen, not from Illinois, on what I uncovered from Chicago with Mayor Brandon Johnson before he testified, Jonathan. And then I took notes when he testified, right? And he very specific, and I'm going to work on that after we're done talking here and stuff. And I posted something on X yesterday about it. So Mayor Brandon Johnson outright blatantly lied to Congress in a couple of ways, but the one that stood out the most was, I forgot who was questioning. He said, I always follow local, state, and federal law. I never violate local, state, and federal law. Well, we have since 2020, marijuana was legalized in the state of Illinois. So in 2020, there was on Brandon Johnson on the website. It says that marijuana was legalized in 2020 in the state of Illinois, but it's still a federal offense, right? He's got marijuana dispensaries all over the city of Chicago. He lied when he says, I don't violate any federal laws. It's a federal law. So my Republican buddies are sending some of the stuff I pulled from the website, some of the information that he said, they know it's a violation of federal law. The left says, hey, nobody's above the law. So what Trump could do, not only with Johnson, but with Pritzker now, he could say, he could first of all tell Johnson that you lied to Congress. You could go to jail, right? That's what they wanted to do to us. Then to both Johnson and Pritzker, say, listen, I'm sending the DEA to the state of Illinois. We're shutting down every weed dispensary that's illegal. They're illegal, right? Shut them down. Either you're going to cooperate with ICE or we're going to shut down every weed dispensary and then we're going to put you in jail, Johnson. That's what I would do. You know what I mean? That's what I would do. Yeah, I mean, he lied on TV. He said, I follow all federal laws. No, you don't. You lie. So I don't know if they're, I don't know if anything's, I just put it on Twitter last night. Some of my, big RNC guys, I know, they called me. They go, that's a great idea. I don't know what's going to happen. The one guy told me, he goes, yeah, but there's so many people that are supportive of, marijuana being legalized now. I said, yeah, I go, it doesn't really matter. Have Trump be Trump and say, make the threat, right? Nobody's above the law. Use it as a dig. And then, but you could still go after him for lying to Congress. I'm going to splice all that together and I'll send it to you later, because I had to go, because it was like it was like 5 hours of interviews and I found the exact time. And my friend is editing it while we're speaking for me to use it and put it out there.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that post. Yeah, I mean, sometimes that's what it takes. It was Al Capone actually was finally brought in. He'd evaded so many attempts to catch him violating laws. It was actually breaking a tax stamp on a pack of cigarettes that led to his arrest. Yeah,
speaking of Al Capone, so Chicago was put on the map, and to this day is because of Al Capone and St. Valentine's Day massacre, right? 7 people were killed. So by the Gage Park facility, right before early Christmas, it was on a Monday afternoon at 2:00. 8 people shot, 4 women, 3 died in a mass shooting. I knew immediately, and I posted it, right? I said, I bet you my right arm, this is Trent DeLarga, right? Because I confronted him in the Gage Park field house. They have field houses like a park district house. And I don't think I sent you some of the pictures yet. I confronted Trent DeLarga all over the place. Gage Park, there are tons of them there. And so that was a mass shooting of 8. That's more than Al Capone's, right? Then about a week and a half later in Cicero, Illinois, Al Capone, remember, I don't know if you know, that's where Al Capone, that was his suburban headquarters. A Sunday at 12:20 in the afternoon, another mass shooting of 4 people, 2 women, 2 men in the street. I'm like, okay, this has got to be them, right? Then that was on a Sunday. That following Friday, a Cicero police officer shot in the back. Even Al Capone and those guys didn't do that back then. They ended up all being gang members, all of them. So it's like, and how people don't even know about it because the media kind of, I mean, they keep it under wraps, so we've been known for 100 some years about Al Capone. We've got more violence and more like mass shootings than when Al Capone was in Chicago.
That's a good frame of reference, and those are horrifying examples. So ultimately, if we're going to do this thing and blow the whistle and find and catch people, and whether it has to do with these buildings and who bought them, who benefited, who may have known ahead of time what was planned for Chicago and what areas and all the mapping and strategy that went in. And I think when you get into follow the money, you can probably figure out many of those things. But if you don't have the political clout and wherewithal, it sounds like those two quasi-Republicans you described, they sound awful. We've got many of them in Ohio as well, as an offshoot of, and I follow the same trajectory. I mean, I was a small business owner who just got fed up with what I was seeing in K through 12 education and got into the fight, and then quickly realized there's not much we can do by being upset at the podium at school board meetings, right, without the backing and will of some politicians willing to step in and enforce rules and laws. So that got me into politics and precinct strategy and all those kinds of things I do. But one of the offshoots of that is I'm so fed up with the number of rhinos we have. I started Ohio Rhino Hunters. You'll find that all over social media. I suggest it for Illinois if you don't have something similar. As a side note, and you'll get a kick out of this, I think, I've started, I forget how many months ago, maybe a year-ish ago, I came up with the idea for Ohio Rhino Hunters. Now we have a cool logo that's getting a lot of attention, and starting to build on that and talking about the people within the Republican Party who don't belong there. Whatever, they're some combination of trans Democrat, rhino, feckless, whatever. They don't belong there. It came to my attention about 2 months ago that there's a group that formed, and actually I thought they were in Chicago, called the Rhino Removal Project.
No, I didn't.
And I started following them and commenting, and I made some posts even. I was like, hey, look, it's not just me. There's another group out there. It turns out they're also in Ohio. I have made contact with them.
Oh, they're not. Okay.
Yeah, they're in Ohio. But they plan to go national. They have interest and intention. So the guy that started that, Leo the Lion, is his handle on X. I've made contact with him. We have plans to collaborate here in Ohio. I'm not surprised. We have so many rhinos in Ohio that two of us had the same idea. But my point in kind of drilling down a little bit into that is we've been sold on this notion that we have a two-party system. And my comment to that is, if we have a two-party system, shouldn't we at least have two parties? Because right now that uniparty, that single party infrastructure is what is allowing this mass fraud and corruption to happen, because they all pat each other on the back and everybody turns a blind eye. Practically everybody, not everybody, but practically everybody is either on board or complicit and turn a blind eye to this stuff. So we need a lot more from politicians, and you mentioned it, media, because we need to expose this stuff, have it go viral, have it go public, have the outrage sufficient that we can get these people thrown behind bars.
Yeah. How about maybe we talk about some hope and change, Barack Obama, hope and change with respect to being a parent, the school board stuff. I guess, with respect to Trump and removing DEI from the schools, right? Getting rid of the Department of Education. And it's like in Illinois, the reason we call it behind enemy lines is we got Pritzker, and, we're kind of helpless. Even like if we win the school board over in my school board district, Pritzker enacted a law that if we go and we win the board, we say, hey, we don't want genderqueer in here anymore, right? At the local level in our school board, he can withhold all our state tax money for our children's school. And same with the library. And I was on an ABC interview locally here, and I was on the interview slamming him with the opposite response to that. So that's in place. And then now we have Trump kind of doing the same thing with the federal government, right? I mean, I looked up, I think my school district gets like 89 million from the state and 4 million from the feds, but still 4 million is 4 million, right? And I don't know how that's going to play out. I mean, I wish there was like a hotline to, reach out and say, hey, there's tampons in my kid's school, boys' room, and they're teaching all this, crazy stuff, woke stuff, anti-police, and, use that to go after them. I would hope. And then the next thing is, because you're more in tune on this stuff than me, is like, if McMahon acts as the Department of Education, that'd be awesome. I guess only 25% of their funds go to education of the 200 and some billion dollars, which the rest is used for just paying off their friends. So hopefully there's hope for us to make an impact and change all this craziness in our kids' schools.
I hope so. I'm going to interject a comment about Newsmax. So you were picked up on an interview with Eric Bolling on Newsmax. It was a great interview. Thanks for doing that. And anybody who is interested in the subject, which I suspect should be everybody, I was a part of a documentary called Transforming America, which is a Newsmax documentary on the status of education in the states. I think understanding what it is, where it comes from, and what the intention of this stuff makes all the sense in the world. The more we know, the better armed we are and better, more sufficient we can be at fighting back and reclaiming education. Bringing this to a wrap, because we're about out of time here, a big element of what I plan to continue to do at UnWoke.academy is drilling down into the finances. That's the companies that are backing this stuff and making it happen. From BlackRock and Vanguard on down, there are many, many people and companies that benefit from this stuff. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we don't want to be, or shouldn't want to be, putting your money toward that. And that is, remember that expression, the globalist left.
Yes.
Know where you donate, invest, and spend your money, because it will come back and haunt you. If you're giving money to the wrong people that hate us and are working to undermine and defeat America, then you're defeating your own purposes.
Yes. Yep. Just like what America's been doing with our tax dollars that they're stopping now.
Yep. We're stopping the tax dollars. Now it's time to stop all the investment dollars. That's what UnWoke.academy is all about. We're going to uncover that. I use my Wall Street background to uncover the woke and point to better alternatives to fund our new freedom economy.
Yeah, when I do interviews and stuff, I say, most people don't realize that we're in a war. We're in the middle of a war right now, and we're losing the war badly. So this is before Trump. So now we have some hope. We can't sit back and think Donald Trump is going to fix everything for us. It's not going to happen. We have to, the day after the election, my wife hates that I'm doing this. And she goes, breakfast, she goes, so is this all over with now? You finished? Your guy won? I said, just the battle just started. It really did. Everything that we led up to here to this point is now where the rubber hits the road, and we have to start implementing, executing, and making things happen. Otherwise, it'll go back to where it was in the future.
I completely agree.
Well, thank you.
Barry, thank you so much for joining me today. Everybody, stay tuned for the next exciting episode of UnWoke.academy. Thanks for joining us today.